I just wanted to talk about labour shortages if I can. It's something that everywhere you go, people have an interest in it. And I'm just wondering, you know, whether it's the UK, New Zealand, everyone is looking for staff. Australia, Brisbane, regional areas are no different. What do you think needs to change to see operators and businesses secure the staff that they do need? And how long do you think before the situation gets back to normal? Sarah, would you like to take that?
I'll give it a good crack to start with. I think it's really interesting, actually. I often get asked, where have the people gone? Everyone all over the world in all sectors is short of workers. Where are they? Did they disappear? There has been some exit from the labour force, actually not really in Australia, but in other countries. It's part of the story, but for us here, it's not really what's going on. Actually, it's been interesting. People have pivoted into new jobs. So we've got aircrew, for example, working as greeters and staff in hospitals, for example. I know that from a hospital in Sydney. And just other shifts like that have gone through the economy. And so that's really been the challenge, particularly for this sector, as you guys have reopened and obviously a bit later than elsewhere. What is the solution? Well, I mean, I think that it is going to take a bit of time. We can't just magic people overnight, but it's obviously very positive to see the migration data that I was showing earlier on. I track that one a lot, and it's been great. That's recovered so strongly in the last couple of months. And so I think we will start to see things easing, particularly from the start of next year. But there will be a transition. I know that the near term is challenging. I don't want to downplay that, and there's a lot of challenge there. But economies are very good at adapting and finding new operating rhythms and changing over time. So it will happen, but I wish it would be right now. I don't think it's quite that quick.
Rose or Tony, did you want to contribute to that as well?
Well, I just think that we have to learn to live with COVID. Once we start living with COVID like it's the flu, then you'll see a more stabilised labour force.
And people will start coming back. Fantastic. If I can go to you, Rose, the journey to 2032, building on our strengths, is the theme for today. And I'm actually going to ask all of you this. Given the current market, what can tourism operators do to ride through this uncertain period? There just seems to be so much changing locally and globally at the moment. Focusing on 2032, but I guess you know, the next couple of years, first of all, what sort of things can they do to put themselves in a good position there?
Bring back fun. I think in all the planning and in all of the conversations, people need to let off steam and they need to have fun. And travellers want to know that they can just exhale after what's been a tricky couple of years. So with all of the planning, March to 2032, you cannot forget the human desire to have a good time, to feel refreshed and to feel renewed. And I think we can't lose the humanity of the trends, of the economy, of inflation, of interest rates, of the airline industry. We've just got to remember that there's a humanity behind all of this. And when we remember the humanity, all the operators need to do this as well. We do it as well in our business. We get good results.
Do you think that's something that Australia is perhaps in a better position to do better than, I guess, competitors overseas? Do you think we're in a unique...
We invented fun when it comes to holidaying. We're very, very good at being very kind and very welcoming. There's an Aussie persona that global visitors love. There's a unique and distinctive flavour of Queenslanders. Let's sell that more and more. And I think that's a very attractive proposition. And again, the humanity, the kindness, the humour, the welcomed nature of Queensland will get us through. But I think we can't lose sight of why people travel in the first place.
Tony, do you have any thoughts on that?
I just think that, as Sarah has mentioned in her presentation, demand is very, very strong. Demand for aviation, demand for tourism. People are chomping at the bit to travel again. We just, from an aviation perspective, we've just got to bide our time and for this issue over in Europe to work its way out, and then you know, just hopefully and be thankful for the airlines bringing more capacity back into the market.
Sarah?
Yeah, I love that comment about fun, because for me, actually, I think the demand is definitely there, and it's interesting to see how it's pivoting. I mean, that's one thing, and I agree completely. Speaking as another non-Australian, the travel here is a much bigger part of the psyche and culture. I also think it's really interesting looking at some of the other trends and businesses positioning themselves within that nature-based tourism and being conscious about your climate footprint. That's clearly for consumers now a much bigger issue than before, and so leaning into that. And also thinking about about how you can digitalise and take advantage of the new technologies on offer. I mean, we often talk about labour shortages and obviously some tasks you can't outsource to the computer, but there are ways of being smarter in how we work. Really leaning into that, I think, is an opportunity, and that will ultimately improve the bottom line as well as help relieve that immediate challenge.
Actually, it's interesting what you say about a different sense in different places. I mean, I've lived in South Australia, in Canberra, and you do notice, or the ACT I should say, coming to Queensland, there is very much a different feel, different people, and not that one's necessarily more important or better than the other, but you do notice a stark difference when you do come to Queensland. Maybe it is the sunshine, maybe it's the people, who knows. I wanted to ask you, Tony, you talked about jet fuel prices. What is causing the high cost of jet fuel prices, and when do you think they will return to normal?
Well, look, Russia produces around 8 to 10% of the world's energy or the world's supply of oil. And when you take 10% of the world's oil out of the market, then divide that by minus 0.1 for some, and I'm not going to go into detail why, but that generates the price increase that you'd expect. And so that's why we've got prices doubling. You're not going to see those prices go down until we see Russia do the right thing and pull out of the Ukraine. At that point, a lot of issues around the jet fuel and oil prices will just go away.
You talked about, I guess, the critical moment for airlines as well, and how the cost of doing business for them is really tough. Do you think airlines will reduce their capacity because of the high fuel prices? Is that something that you see as a very real a tricky situation that could actually impact what's happening and tourism out here?
They won't reduce capacity, but what they'll do is they will modify their plans. So instead of recovering to pre-COVID levels within the next 12 months or domestically, within the next few months, they'll delay that. And they have to, because the only way, if your unit costs go up in any business, you have to raise the price. And in aviation, the only way that you can do that is to reduce capacity.
Thoughts from the rest of the panel on that? Will that stop people from travelling, do you think?
Well, I think it's an interesting demand and supply balance, isn't it? Because the demand is so strong, and it's very hard, I understand completely, for the airlines, because they're trying to balance that, and they do have this extra cost coming through, and they need to factor that in. They are businesses, but with demand being as strong as it is, it's an interesting balance on whether they could actually increase capacity a little bit, and they would get enough demand there that they could keep the ticket prices up. So I think that's actually the challenge for that particular sector, domestically and internationally over the next sort of 12, 24 months as we do go through this period in terms of the oil price and it playing out. So I think, being mindful of the demand side as well as that supply and cost pressures. I'm sure they are, but that's something I'll be watching for sure.
Just a couple of tricky months, maybe years ahead. I'm going to ask you one last question to all of you, but I'll start with you, Rose, as the futurist. There's a lot of talk about, work, flexibility, working from home, that sort of thing. And you were mentioning work holiday, which seems the ideal, I have to say. Do you see it lasting and becoming a permanent fixture in people's work, or do you think down the track that things will return to normal and everyone will be back in the office? And is this, in fact, a huge opportunity?
Yeah, look, I think there are times when you absolutely need to be in an office to collaborate, create, imagine. I know for our business, we have 3,000 people across Australia and New Zealand. We love our people, and they're coming back into the office 2, 3, 4 days a week because they need to see other humans to create and imagine. There are times when you need to focus. Working from home or a third place is perfect for that. I think the hybrid model is here to stay. I think it would be wrong to assume that there is no need for an office. That just simply isn't the case. But it's what you need to be and why. So it's where you're going to be the most productive, the happiest, the most connected to your colleagues. And so we're seeing a lot of our people back in for most of the week. When they need to focus and they need absolute silence, they should be doing it from home. And I think that's going to be the way of the future. But the opportunity for that in tourism is big as well, because it allows people to really plan their weeks and have those 3-4 day weekends and really intensify 3 to 4 days maybe in an office and then take some time off and take off for an extended weekend. So I think it's going to be a great thing for travel.
Tony?
Look, I think we're all from Sydney, is that right? Working from home, as an airline put it, it's bonza. Like seriously, it's, you you're taking 2 or 3 hours of travel time, you're taking that back. And if you're putting that back into work, that's just going to lift productivity. So, and if there are people different from me, I'm sure there are, and they have different, attitudes to it and benefits from it. But I think it's terrific and here to stay.
And what about from the boss's point of view, Sarah? Do you think it's here to stay as well?
I think the point on there are times when you do need your team in the office to collaborate and to actually connect and to establish a team culture and a working rhythm that then you can take into working from home. That's really vital. I think leaders recognise that, and staff as well. Actually, they want that connection. I don't think there's anybody really who wants to just work completely in isolation. So that I do expect that that balance is probably here to stay, because everyone also recognises the benefits of working from home. I think it's a more general outcome from COVID, where we are going to see some structural shifts. I was thinking, in the travel sector more broadly, we've seen changes in people's holiday patterns, in their travel patterns. I think some of those will unwind. Some of it's connected to the challenge around airlines and ticket prices in particular, but I think some of them are here to stay and will become a bit more permanent. And it's always hard to identify them in real time, but just leaning into them, into those changes that do become really permanent, and what that means as an opportunity for the sector. I think that's going to be really critical over the next sort of 5-10 years beyond the near term.
Fantastic. Look, thank you very much to the three of you. Please thank our panellists, Tony Webber, Rose Herceg and Sarah Hunter.